Hey everyone, welcome back to Literary Canon. Hope you're all having a great start to your year. I just wanted to hop on today and talk a little bit about some books I am planning to read for 2025. I have a large pile with me right here of books, and I just want to talk about a few of them. Actually, no, we're going to talk about all of these. But I want to talk about these, maybe read a few snippets from each one, talk about why I'm interested in it. In 2024, I read 19 books, which was a few short of my goal. I wanted to read 24 books, 24 for 2024. But I did not make that goal. So I'm going to cut down a little bit on my goal, but hope I read more than I read last year. I want to make my goal 20 books this year. And I think I want to focus a little bit on some larger works this year, some big books. And I have already started the year off strong with my first big book, which is Underworld by DeLillo. If you watched my top 5 books of 2024 video, you would know that 2 DeLillo books appeared in that video. The first one was White Noise, which is an honorable mention. And the second one was Libra, which was my #1 book of the year. So I decided to start off 2024 strong with Underworld. This novel is fantastic so far. If you don't know anything about DeLillo, he's an Italian-American author. Grew up in New York. He's been basically an author for his entire life after school. And Underworld was sort of his magnum opus. It came in the middle period of his writing. Many people consider it to be his masterpiece. It essentially tells the story of a man named Nick Shea and his life, but it starts out chronologically at the end, not at the end of his life, but towards the end. And you work your way backwards in time, learning about... Something just fell off the bookshelf and attacked me. Learning about his life from the later point back to the very beginning. And here is a snippet from Underworld. I just love his writing so much. Sometimes I see something so moving, I know I'm not supposed to linger. See it and leave. If you stay too long, you wear out the wordless shock. Love it and trust it and leave. The book actually opens with a very famous baseball game, the 1953 Dodgers versus New York Giants game, where Bobby Thompson hit the homer in the bottom of the 9th and won them the pennant. And I'm a person who does not care about sports that much. Baseball doesn't interest me other than its sort of Americana factor, which I find fascinating. It's America's pastime. But I've never really cared about baseball. But the opening of this book, the prologue of Underworld, is a almost 60-page rendition of that baseball game, told from the point of view of several different characters, including J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI, who was at the baseball game. And it is just fantastic. It was a beautiful opening. So, currently reading Underworld by DeLillo. I am also sneaking in a little bit of the Bathysphere book, Effects of the Luminous Ocean Depths by Brad Fox. Now, this is a little bit different for me. This is not fiction, and it's also not necessarily nonfiction. It does tell nonfiction stories, but what we're looking at here is the lives of the people who worked on the bathysphere and dove down in the bathysphere. The bathysphere is that essentially ball of steel that they drop down into the ocean. There's 2 people cramped up inside of it, and they're able to look through the super thick glass portholes and see what's going on out in the middle of the ocean and down deep in the ocean especially. So really looking here in this book at the lives of these people and snippets of what they're encountering. He did a ton of research for this book. It's super interesting, and it's got some beautiful illustrations. I love the cover, this little weird anglerfish looking dude. And then we've also got, We got stuff like this in there. Just gorgeous artwork of some freaky fish dudes. Got these little guys. Little sloth. So cool. Here's a snippet from the Bathysphere book. Afloat on a boat near Haiti a few years before, Beebe had noticed phosphorescence in the water and sent for a shotgun. He fired straight down, then marveled at what looked like a comet of glowing shot arced into the deep and swept by a train of trembling paleness. When he saw bioluminescent fish darting outside the bathysphere, they looked to him like stars gone mad. It's just gorgeous, and I'm really fascinated by the deep sea, especially how alien it is. So I am really enjoying this so far. The Bathysphere book by Brad Fox. Definitely recommend. So those are the only two I'm currently reading. Now we're going to get into what I want to read in 2025. We'll start out with some fiction. I think the next book I would like to read after I finish these two is The Volcano Lover by Susan Sontag. I encountered Susan Sontag for the first time in one of my creative writing classes in college, where we read snippets from Regarding the Pain of Others, which is essentially a book of essays talking about violence and how we as humans perceive violence. Susan Sontag is definitely more well-known for writing essays and being an essayist, but she does have a few works of fiction, and one of those is The Volcano Lover. Now, I love geology, and actually the way I found out about this book was I was looking up fiction and novels about volcanoes, and this one popped up. And we're essentially, in this novel, going to be looking at the life of a woman. Oh no, is there not a description? Did I only read the description? Okay, so back from a quick Google expedition. The Volcano Lover is looking at the life of a woman named Emma Hamilton, her marriage to Sir William Hamilton, and her affair with Lord Horatio Nelson, who was a British officer in the Royal Navy, especially during the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. And then it eventually deals with her abandonment by these men and her kind of descent into poverty. It's a historical novel. It's based on real events and real people, but it is fictionalized. It's set in Naples, so the name comes from Mount Vesuvius. And I think this is just going to be really great. It sounds really interesting. I'm excited to get into it. I really enjoyed Susan Sontag's essays, so I'm very excited about this. And I'm actually going to link in our description a video, an interview that Susan Sontag did. She's kind of a badass. It's a good watch. It's entertaining. Here are the opening lines from Volcano Lover. It is the entrance to a flea market. No charge, admittance free, sloppy crowds, vulpine, larking. Why enter? What do you expect to see? I'm seeing. I'm checking on what's in the world, what's left, what's discarded, what's no longer cherished, what had to be sacrificed, what someone thought might interest someone else. But it's rubbish. If they're here, it's already been sifted through. But there may be something valuable there. Not valuable, exactly, but something I would want to rescue, something that speaks to me, to my longings, speaks of, sounds great. I'm very excited. Next up on the list, we have Recognitions by William Gaddis. This is a massive book. This is the New York Review Books publication of it. I actually started this book in 2023 and got a significant way into it. I think I got almost, maybe a little over 300 or 400 pages in, which for a almost 950 page long book is pretty impressive. But I eventually kind of just got bogged down with it. I wanted to give it a little time to sit. I wanted to read more and come back into it later. William Gaddis is kind of interesting. I think within literary circles, if you mention the name William Gaddis, everyone's going to know who you're talking about. Especially, he's kind of like John Williams. If you mention John Williams outside of literary circles, people are going to say, the Star Wars composer? No, the author of Stoner. And it's not about weed. I think William Gaddis has sort of that same thing going on. People in the know him, people outside don't really. But essentially what the Recognitions is about is the son of a clergyman who decides he wants to be an artist, and he studies art in Paris, I believe, and then there's one critic who kind of just destroys him, and he can't make any artwork anymore. He moves to New York, and he gets found by another kind of art dealer there by the name of Rectal Brown, who, I mean, what a name. It might not look like it, but this book is funny. But he gets found by an art dealer named Rectal Brown, who makes sort of this Faustian deal with him. Rectal Brown says, hey, you are going to paint forgeries of famous Flemish paintings, and we are going to sell them as newly discovered originals. And the main character, Wyatt Guyon, finds out that he can do art, but only if he's copying someone else's work, making forgeries, mockeries of it. So, I mean, that's such a good premise to start out with, and I'm really excited to get back into this. Here is our few opening lines for the Recognitions. Even Camilla had enjoyed masquerades of the safe sort, where the mask may be dropped at that critical moment it presumes itself as reality. But the procession up the foreign hill, bounded by cypress trees, impelled by the monotone chanting of the priest, and retarded by hesitations at the 14 stations of the cross, not to speak of the funeral carriage in which she was riding, a white horse-drawn vehicle which resembled a Baroque confectionery stand, might have ruffled the shy countenance of her soul if it had been discernible. Again, beautiful writing. Very excited for this. Next up, we have got 100 Years of Solitude, some magical realism, and some Latin boom literature. I have not read much from the Latin boom, so I'm excited to start out 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Of course, no introduction needed. Very famous, probably the most famous of the Latin American boom authors. Very excited for this novel. It tells the story of some people living in a town in Colombia, the magical realism that goes along with that town, and all of their lives across a few generations, a few hundred years, I believe. So it has a very interesting premise. I've heard wonderful things. Many people cite this as one of the greatest novels of all time. So, super excited to get into this. Here's our opening lines. If I can get to the page. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. That's probably one of the most famous novel openers of all time. So, here we have it. Next up, we have a bit of a twofer. I've got The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs by Stephen Brusatte, and The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, also by Stephen Brusatte. Sort of a sequel. Now, these are both nonfiction. I do not read nonfiction very much, but I have had The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs sitting on my shelf for years, and I recently ordered The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, and I am dying to give these a start. I am fascinated by paleontology. It's one of my favorite subjects in the world. Ever since I was a small child, I have been super into dinosaurs. They are my favorite animal. I say it still counts, even if they're extinct. Whatever. But I love paleontology. And Stephen Brusatte is a really awesome young paleontologist doing a lot of great work over in Scotland, especially a lot of work with feathered dinosaurs, and the lineage that led from dinosaurs into our modern day birds. I've also been doing a lot of bird watching lately. Sibley Guide to Birds of the East. Really awesome. Great references. I've seen a lot of robins. Saw a bald eagle a few weeks ago. Saw a hawk the other day. Got a lot of good stuff going on. But, yeah, paleontology. Love it. This is going to be awesome. And then, I know a lot about dinosaurs. I know a lot about their geologic history. I know a lot about the Mesozoic era. What I don't know as much about is the evolution of mammals. How we went from those little skittering, shrew-like little guys living under the heels of the dinosaurs into the diverse group that mammals are today. I am very excited to give this a shot. And both of these books have some really awesome artwork in them that starts at the chapters in both of the books. Here we have an Archaeopteryx and the Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, which is one of the first birds. There's some really great T-Rex drawings in here. Feathered T-Rex, you love to see it. Tyrannosaurus Rex, gorgeous animal. And then in the Rise and Reign of Mammals, we've also got some awesome artwork. Little shrew guys, and a dinosaur, and a T-Rex skull. And I really love this illustration of Ardipithecus, one of our human ancestors. Something really uncanny going on here, I think. I think it's awesome looking. So, Stephen Brusatte, very excited to start these two books. I hope I didn't call them novels. I say novels a lot. I said 2025 is the year of big books, and of course, that cannot exclude Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. I am a big fan of Westerns. I especially love Western movies. True Grit, No Country for Old Men, Magnificent Seven. I love these films, but I haven't... Oh, The Power of the Dog came out a few years ago. That was a great Western. I haven't really read that many Westerns, though. The only one I can really think of, the only few I can think of that are at the top of my head are Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy and In the Distance by Hernan Diaz. So I said, why not give one of the kings of Westerns a chance? So I picked up Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. I don't know that much about it. I know it's a Western. I know it involves cattle ranchers going on sort of this epic journey. So I am very excited to get into this book. This will probably be more in the summer of 2025. It feels like a summer read. Here's our opening. When Augustus came out on the porch, the blue pigs were eating a rattlesnake. Not a very big one. It had probably just been crawling around looking for shade when it ran into the pigs. They were having a fine tug-of-war with it, and its rattling days were over. The sow had it by the neck, and the shoat had the tail. I just think that, I mean, that's such a good opener, a little snippet of just life out there. So I'm excited for this. My pile of books is going to topple over. Okay, last two, and these are going to be special to me. I'm very excited to start these. The Return of the King by, of course, JRR Tolkien. And The Silmarillion, also by JRR Tolkien. I love this edition of The Silmarillion. We'll get into this in a minute, though. The Return of the King. This is the third part of The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth is a fictional world that I've been obsessed with for a long time. I think Tolkien's work is magical. It's beautiful. He, to me, is the king of fantasy authors, and he will not be topped by anybody else. He's just such a master at his craft, at the writing. His characters are deep and intricate and beautiful. His world is delicately crafted. His languages are elegant and gorgeous and beautiful. And I mean, everything he does, he's truly a Renaissance man. I mean, it's fantastic. But I've been a fan of The Lord of the Rings for a very long time. It started in middle school when the first Hobbit movie was coming out. And one of my friends wanted to go watch it for his birthday. And my mom bought me the book, and I read it before I went so I could kind of understand what was going on. The first one's the best of the bunch. Smaug, and the second one's great, but that first movie is really the only one that kind of follows the spirit of the book. I tried to read Fellowship of the Ring after The Hobbit. I was in early middle school, and I struggled with it. I could not do it. So my knowledge of The Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth came first and foremost from reading The Hobbit, and then from playing the Lego Lord of the Rings video game. not from watching the movies, but from playing the Lego The Lord of the Rings video game. And then I watched the movies. And then finally, a few years ago, I read The Fellowship of the Ring. And then I read The Two Towers last year. And now it is time for The Return of the King. I have the Houghton Mifflin editions. You don't really see these very often. I think they're really cool. Here we have Minas Tirith shown off in this copy. My Two Towers copy has Orthanc, and it's flooding after the Ents attack. And then my copy of The Fellowship of the Ring has Rivendell. I really like these covers. I like these editions a lot. They're nice. They're pretty good and floppy, but they hold up very well. I mean, this doesn't even really look red, but I did read it, I promise. What else can you say? I mean, it's The Lord of the Rings. It's fantastic. And then the Silmarillion, which is sort of, everyone kind of describes it as the Bible of Lord of the Rings. It deals with creation myth, but then I think it's also sort of a heroic epic tale in the saga of epic tales, sort of akin to Beowulf and the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Epic of Gilgamesh, but of course set in the fictional Middle-earth. I love this edition of the Silmarillion. I think it is gorgeous. We have some beautiful stained glass artwork on the front here, elvish script, and then the pages. I'm not sure how I feel about the lime green, but the reason I chose this edition is I love the elvish script on the side. I think it's awesome. I mean, what can you say about Tolkien's works other than that they are magnificent? The other really neat thing about this edition of the Silmarillion is throughout it, it comes with some of Tolkien's own drawings of Middle-earth. Here we have the Hall of Manwë on Taniquetil, which is one of the islands. One of the mountains. He was a fantastic artist as well. He didn't just write well. He sort of had it all going on. Illustration he did of Fangorn Forest. Fantastic. His depiction of the Eye of Sauron, the ring's text, I think, around it. Beautiful. A lot of the writing in this book is a lot more epic and mythological than The Lord of the Rings, so it's sometimes hard to follow along. I mean, it is like you are reading a historical text or like you are reading the Bible. But his writing is just gorgeous. There's no doubt about it. There was Eru, the one, who in Arda is called a Luvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made, and he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each alone, or but few together, while the rest hearkened, for each comprehended only that part of the mind of Iluvatar from which he came, and in the understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly, yet ever as they listened they came to deeper understanding and increased in unison and harmony. Middle-earth was created from song, from music, which I think is awesome. And then I'll read another short snippet of it that actually sounds more like one of the epic kind of mythological texts. This comes much later on. Therefore Morgoth came, climbing slowly from his subterranean throne, and the rumor of his feet was like thunder underground. And he issued forth clad in black armor, and he stood before the king like a tower, iron-crowned, and his vast shield, sable, unblazoned, cast a shadow over him like a storm cloud. But Fingolfin gleamed beneath it as a star, for his mail was overlaid with silver, and his blue shield was set with crystals, and he drew his sword Ringle that glittered like ice. This is a duel between one of the elvish kings, Fingolfin, and the Dark Lord, Morgoth. So, that's the Silmarillion by Tolkien. That was my huge stack of books that I'm excited to read in 2025. I hope I get to them all. There will certainly be others, and you will see reviews for some of these books to come. But I'm super excited for the year. I think it's going to be great. If you have any book suggestions, please sound them off in the comments. And thanks for watching. Bye.